Happy Friday, everybody. So we are going to check our practice quiz. You should have already tried this, and then you are going to follow along and check your answers. If you were having trouble, you would watch this video and do it at the same time to help you. So number one, it says, use the table to write a linear function that relates y to x. So we know we're going to have this format, right? So again, how do we find the y equals mx plus b? How do we find the m for a table? Remember, for a table, we use the change in y over the change in x. That's how we're going to find our m. So I'm going to look at what is this changing by each time. That's going to tell me my m. So I have, it looks like it's going down by 6 each time. So over here, I'm going to put the minus 6 on the top. That's the change. And then for the x's, if I look here, I follow it all the way across, it looks like it's going up by 3 each time. So that's a positive 3. So I'm going to put that on the bottom. The change in y over the change in x. And then when I use my calculator to simplify this, negative 6 divided by 3 would actually give me a negative 2. So right away, I know that my y equals mx. My m is negative 2. How do I find my b? For this one, remember to find our b, we look at when x is 0. The number that is across from it in the y column is our b. So this is actually already done because we don't write plus 0. Our b is actually 0 because the ordered pair is 0, 0. So we are done. There is no b, and we do not have to write plus 0. All right, let's look at the next one. Again, same thing. Y equals mx plus b. So we're going to find our m. Our m is the change in y over the change in x. So I'm going to find the change in y, what's happening each time. 7 to 3, it looks like I take away 4. Again, if I look at it, I'm taking away 4 every time. So my change in y is a negative 4. And then if I look at my change in x, that's going to go on the bottom. My change in x, if I follow this across, it looks like from 3 to 0, I add 3, I add 3. So that is a plus 3. So it's a positive 3 on the bottom. So this is my slope, or my m, rate of change, whatever you want to call it. That's my m, so it's going to go in this spot because it's already simplified. We cannot simplify that farther. And then we're going to see, is there a b? I'm going to look at when my x is 0. So b over here in my notes. We look at when x equals 0. We look at the number that's by it. And then that will tell us if it's plus a number or minus a number. So this is actually a positive 3, so it's y equals negative 4 over 3x, positive or plus 3. That's how I find my b. All right, so that's from the table. So now looking at using a graph. When we do a graph, it's a little bit different. To find our m in a graph, we do rise over run. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick 2 points. I'm going to go from left to right, just like we read. That's how we do our math. So I'm going to pick this point right here at negative 3, and I'm going to go over to here. So if I look, I'm going up 1, up 2. So I go up 2. And then if I look over, I go over 1. So my rise was 2, and I went over 1. And so if I simplify that, 2 over 1 is really just 2. So that's how I find my m. So with y equals mx plus b, I found my m. I can plug it right in to here, 2x. Now I'm going to find my b. Remember, on a graph, my b is on the y-axis. It's just where does that point or line hit the y-axis. So if I look here, there's a point right here at negative 3. It's right there. So that is automatically my b. It hits the y-axis. This is how we find our b. We look at where does either, if it's a line or if they're points, where does it hit this y up and down line? So that hits at -3. So we would put -3 for our b, or -3. So our equation is y equals 2x minus 3. That's how we found it from a graph. All right, let's look at the next one. This one's just a little note here. It's the same, except for we need to note the scale on the graph, which means what the numbers are counting by. So if I look at this one, we're writing our equation again. We know to find our slope. So we know this is going to be y equals mx and then plus or minus b. I just write that in there a little bit. All right, my slope, or my m, is the rise over the run. So again, I'm picking a point on the left, and I'm going to go to the right. So if I look at this one, I'm right here, and this is where it's tricky when it says note the scale. So this is right in the middle. But if I notice here, it's counting by 2's. So if this is 0 right here, it'd be -2, -4. So what's in the middle? That's actually -3. So I'm starting here, so each half of the box is counting by 1. So 1, I go up 1, and then up 2, and then up 3. So I actually rose 3. I had to be careful with my counting. But then when I look at the x, they are counting by 1. So each box is actually 1 for the x's, 1, 2. So that was over 2, and this was up 3. So again, here's my slope. Oops, sorry about that. So here's my slope. 3 over 2. So I'm going to write that in. 3 over 2 is simplified. So y equals 3 over 2x. And then the last part, how do I find my b? So this is nice because I think it's already, there's a point on there. When I look at my y-axis, again, I'm looking at just this. Where does the points or the line hit? When you look at this one, right away I notice there's a point at 0, 0, or at just 0. So my b is actually 0, 0. That's my b. So we do not write plus 0. We just keep it as this. Y equals 3/2 x. This goes away. We do not write plus 0 anymore in algebra. All right, so go to the next question on your quiz. This is going to be the next target. So you would get out your 6.4 note. So this is the linear versus non-linear. Remember, linear means a line, and then it means some other things when we're talking about equations or tables. So we're going to look at just the first one, looking at these graphs. Which one is a line? Well, this one's not. It goes all over the place. This one's a circle. That's not a line. This one's a line for sure. And let's make sure there's not multiple right answers. If I look at this, it goes down 1 over 1, down 1 over 2, down 1 over 3. This one's not going in a straight line. It's actually quite off. So our only answer would be C. We just picked the one that looks like a line. Easy enough for the graphing ones. Now for number 6, this is where we're going to use that partner note sheet that says what a linear or nonlinear function is. So linear, there are 2 things, remember. It has to be in the, where you see like a number, and I'll just put an example like 2x plus 3y equals 15. That's called standard form. Or it has to be in the form of y equals mx plus b. So you might have something like -2x minus 3 equals 0. Again, that's going to be in slope-intercept form. That's the only 2 ways we can see linear when we look at an equation for right now. Non-linear, when it's not linear, what you're going to see is you'll see exponents like x squared or x to the 3rd power. That's non-linear. You'll know right away. Another thing we learned about non-linear, we can't have x multiplied by y. So you cannot see x and y multiplied by each other. Another thing we learned, non-linear, and I'll just put that over here. We learned that you can't have in the denominator. So you can't have like 3 over x, or you can't have 2 over y. It's not allowed to happen. That would be a non-linear function. So these are all the things that make it non-linear. So when we look at the questions, we should be looking at our note sheets, or even on here, we just took notes again. So when I look at y equals 10x, I can tell that is linear because this is y equals mx, and then it'd be like plus 0 or plus b. It's in the slope-intercept form. Look at the next one, b. Right away, I know that that's nonlinear, and I'm going to tell you why. There is an x right here, and that's not allowed for linear, so it's nonlinear. I'm just going to put non. That right there tells me. All right, C. I'm looking at it. It kind of looks like y equals mx plus b, but I notice there is an exponent here. It is not allowed to be there. So that is non-linear. So that's how we look at equations, as long as we know what it should look like and should not look like. And then let's look at a table showing linear relationships. Remember, we talked about in a table, you have to have a constant on the x and the y side. You have to be able to find a slope. So remember, slope is change in y over change in x. That means that everything, it needs to be constant. So if I look here, this is going down by 1, this goes down by 1, but then it starts to go up by 1 and up by 1. Well, that's not going to allow me to write a slope. It's not anything constant. So right away, I know that's not going to be linear. Next one, I'm going to check it. Let's try. I always start on the y side because I know for my slope I have to do that first. So it looks like from there, I go minus 2. If I minus 2, if I minus 2, I'm sorry, I should be adding 2, adding 2. So each time, it actually does work on this side, but I need to check the x side too, because it can't just be on one side only. So these are constant here, so the slope would be 2 over, and then I want to make sure this goes up by 1, that goes up by 1, that goes up by 1. Oh, this one also goes up by 1. They're all the same on this side. It's 2 over 1. Or we would say our slope is just 2. This one, we can write a slope. I know that means this one is linear. Let's check the other ones to make sure, though. We want to make sure we understand. So let's just check C and see why that's not linear. So if I look at these, I go from 1 to 2, that's plus 1, 2 to 4, oh, that's plus 2. That's plus 4. So right away, these aren't going by the same numbers. That's why it's not linear. All right, let's look at what number is missing. So this is just kind of thinking backwards. We would look to see where we're missing. So we're going to go down here and try to figure out what we're counting by. So I'm going to start at the back. If I go from 14 to 10, what am I doing? Well, I'm subtracting 4. And then if I go from 10 to 6, I also subtract 4. So what should I do to find my missing number? I should take 6 and I should subtract 4, and that would give me 2. So hopefully you got most of these right. If you had trouble doing it on your own and you used this video, hopefully this helped a lot, and you will expect your quiz will look exactly the same as this.